It was supposed to be a simple drive. I had done it countless times before, cutting across the long, winding stretch of Red Canyon Road to visit my parents. I left late, way later than I should have, but I was determined to make the 2-hour trip through the desert. Night had fully fallen by the time I merged onto the highway, and the road ahead stretched into pitch-black nothingness. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating only the jagged outlines of rocks and cacti that flanked the road. I turned on the radio, but it was just static out here. A glance at my phone told me what I already knew. No service. This part of the desert always gave me a bad feeling. I hated driving it alone at night, but it was the fastest route. I passed the old rusted road sign marking the start of Red Canyon Road. There was no turning back now. The route twisted and turned, like the spine of some enormous dead beast, winding through hills that loomed on either side of the narrow road. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long, sinister shadows across the landscape. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, but I brushed it off. The desert was eerie at night, sure, but there was nothing out there. Nothing except the occasional jackrabbit or coyote. Or so I thought. About 20 minutes in, I saw it. A figure. In the road. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching in protest as my car lurched to a stop. The figure, no, the man, stood motionless in the middle of the road, his back to me. He was wearing a suit of all things, a black suit, old-fashioned, like something from a 1950s movie. His head hung low, his shoulders slumped forward. I honked my horn. Nothing. "Hey!" I yelled through the open window. "Move!" Still nothing. I felt a sudden, overwhelming unease. Something about the way he stood there, so still, so out of place, made my skin crawl. I considered backing up and driving around him, but the road was too narrow. I'd have to drive right past him. I rolled up the window, locked the doors, and eased my foot off the brake. As I approached, my headlights illuminated his face, or what should have been his face. The closer I got, the more I realized something was wrong. He didn't have a face. There was skin where his eyes, nose, and mouth should have been, smooth and featureless, like a mannequin. My heart began to pound in my chest. What the hell was this? I couldn't tear my eyes away from him. He was standing less than 10 feet in front of my car now, his head slowly turning toward me, as if he could see me despite his lack of eyes. Then he began to move, not walking, gliding. His feet never left the ground, but he was getting closer. Panic surged through me, and I floored the gas. The car jerked forward, and for a split second, I thought I might hit him. But as I sped past, I realized he was no longer in front of me. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The road was empty. I tried to steady my breathing, but my hands were trembling on the steering wheel. What just happened? Was I hallucinating? Exhaustion, maybe? I hadn't slept well in days. I kept driving, faster now, desperate to put distance between me and whatever that thing was. The road twisted tighter, the cliffs on either side looming larger. The farther I drove, the more the shadows seemed to stretch, lengthening unnaturally, as if the darkness itself was alive. I told myself it was just my imagination. The desert at night can play tricks on your eyes, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Another 20 minutes passed, and then I saw it again. The man in the suit. He was standing in the road exactly as before, back to me, head low, shoulders slumped. My stomach dropped. I had been driving the whole time. I hadn't turned around. I couldn't have. There were no other roads out here, no intersections. But somehow, he was back. This time, I didn't slow down. I gripped the wheel, heart pounding, and sped toward him. He didn't move. My headlights hit him, and for a moment, I braced for impact. But then he was gone. just like that. The road ahead was empty. I glanced in my rearview mirror. Empty. I had to get out of here. I pushed the accelerator harder, the car groaning as it sped around the sharp curves. The wind whipped through the cracked window, but I barely noticed. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. I needed to get off this road, but there was nowhere to go. No exits, no gas stations, just miles of desert and cliffs. And then my car began to sputter. No, 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 I muttered, slamming my foot on the gas, but the car didn't respond. It slowed, the engine coughing like it was choking. I glanced at the fuel gauge. Full. It wasn't the gas. The headlights flickered and then went out. Now I was alone, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by darkness. I fumbled for my phone, but of course, no signal. The car rolled to a complete stop, and I sat there, staring out into the void. My pulse thundered in my ears. That's when I saw him. In the distance, the man in the suit, standing in the middle of the road, but this time, he was facing me. Even though it was pitch black, I could see him. His featureless face, the smooth skin where his eyes should have been. He began to walk or glide toward me, slow and deliberate. I tried to start the car again, but the engine only clicked. My heart pounded against my ribs as I fumbled with the door handle, finally throwing it open and stumbling out. The desert air was cold, biting at my skin as I ran. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away. I ran for what felt like hours, but every time I looked back, he was there, getting closer. Finally, I tripped, falling hard onto the rocky ground. My hands scraped against the jagged stones as I pushed myself up. But when I looked up, he was there, standing over me. And for the first time, he spoke. "You shouldn't have come this way." The last thing I saw before everything went black was his hand reaching for me, smooth and pale like his face. And then, nothing.